Hey guys, and welcome back to our little portrait painting breakdown series, whatever else you want to call it. These are videos where I, as a professional artist, show you step by step how I actually go about breaking down and executing a painting, specifically of a face. And of course, I share with you lots of little tips and tricks so that you, even as a beginner, you guys, even as a beginner, these are really simple steps that you can take to start, maybe hopefully someday, get yourself to the point where you are totally, and you are capable, if you believe it or not, of painting your own portraits, your own faces completely out of paint. So I'm going to, as you can see, I've got my laptop pulled up here, so I'm going to bring you over to my screen. And of course, for today's video, I'm going to show you a time-lapse video I did of me painting the famous Miss Betty White. I just posted this time-lapse video not that long ago, so you can also see the whole time-lapse video if you like. But I'm actually going to take you kind of slowed down a bit through this time-lapse video so we can stop at certain points, talk about certain things, and again, show you what it takes, and it doesn't take much really, to paint somebody's face like Betty White. So let's go on ahead and start seeing our favorite golden girl come to life. I don't know if she was your favorite. Rose was definitely my favorite, but here we go. Of course, my intro for Canvas by Kari here. Now, as we get started, of course, we flip over the canvas. Before we even get started, and I've talked about this before and other not just portrait breakdowns, but just painting breakdown videos in general. Before you get started painting a portrait, especially a portrait, but any painting just in general, it really, really helps to have a sketch ready to go. Some artists can do things without a sketch magically. I don't know how, quite honestly. That's just not my style. My style, I have to be really prepared when I go in to do a painting, and I have to have a sketch ready. And there are actually a couple of different ways that you can go about getting a sketch ready. But I'm going to tell you right now, about 9 times out of 10, the method I use is tracing. And it's not being lazy, it's not cheating, it's just tracing, okay? It's totally fine, even as a professional artist, especially when you guys, as a professional, I have a lot of paintings that I want to get done in a given day or a given week, right? And I don't have time always to sit down and sketch my whole painting by hand, because the final result is what, you know, everybody cares about, right? Whether you're the one getting the painting or you're the one watching me make the painting, most people want to see the painting process or see the finished product. They're not really super interested in the sketching process, right? So like when you look at my finished portraits, like either this portrait or literally any other portrait I've ever painted, you can't even tell how I went about sketching it, or if I even sketched it at all. Right, the sketching is not the main point of painting a portrait. I want you guys to know that. And tracing is always okay. I do it all the time. But aside from that, let's go on ahead and keep on watching here. So of course, before we get started actually painting, we have to mix up and get our paint colors ready. So for this portrait, and I've done this in other portraits as well. As you can see here, I did a black and white portrait theme today, hey? Black and white portraits, you guys, and I said this, and I will say it into infinity, is the easiest thing for you as a beginner artist. If you want to get started painting portraits, doing black and white, you know, grayscale portraits is the easiest way to go, and the best way to get started into painting portraits as a beginner. Because when you're painting things in grayscale, you don't have to worry too much about color. Sure, we have to worry about whether it's, you know, dark gray in this area, whether it's black in this area, whether it needs to be white or really light gray in this area, but that's only a few select shades of color, tones of color, if you will, right? You don't have to worry about making the whole face in living color, right? We don't have to worry about what color is the flesh tone gonna be, right? What color is the skin tone gonna be? We don't have to worry about the color of the hair, the color of the eyes, so on and so forth, right? Literally every color under the sun. You don't have to worry about that when you're painting a portrait in black and white or grayscale. You just have to worry about, you know, you've got a set number, you've got white, gray, and black basically, and a couple 50 shades of gray, right? You can have as many shades of gray as you want, but essentially it's just those 3 colors that you're working with. White, black, and gray. That's all it is. So that then when you strip away the colors like that, you can really focus on making the forms of the face and just focusing on literally just the shapes and the forms of the face. I don't know how else to say that. So, of course, here on my palette, I've got, and this is another thing to note, you don't have to make, all 50 shades of gray, like I said, on your palette when you get started. Typically, I do about 2 or 3 different variations of gray on my palette, and then as I'm working on the page, I will bring in white and black, and typically actually raw umber. I'll get to that in a second. But you don't need to mix up a billion different colors when you're working in grayscale either. It's just white, which comes straight out of the tube, black, which either comes, this is where we get into this, straight out of the tube, or I like to make my own black. Yeah, I like to make my own black using raw umber. So I will have raw umber as another, like, my darkest shade of gray here. So I've got like 3 tones of gray here. I've got light gray here, medium gray here, and then raw umber serves as my dark gray there. And then I make my own black from raw umber and blue. And we can actually rewind, and you can see this happening in real time. You can see I put down 2 dollops of raw umber, and this one here, whoops, too far. Back it up. Right there, I just add blue to it. Because that's all black is, you guys. It's actually just typically a really, really dark gray with blue added into it. Like if you get ink pens and stuff, if you've ever written on a piece of paper with a black ink pen and then it gets wet, sometimes there's like blue that just randomly, drips out of the ink on the page. That's because blue is typically added to make black in the worlds of art and ink and acrylics and all that stuff. Plus also, if you get a tube of black acrylic paint, not always, sometimes it will be, you'll be able to lighten it up, but I find when I do that, if I lighten up, like to make my other tones of gray with black paint straight out of the tube, those tones of gray are going to turn out really bluish. Because again, there's that blue added in to make the black paint really, really dark. So that's why I highly, highly recommend and even advocate for using raw umber instead of black. And then from there, you can make your own black. It's just my advice. Just my advice in this video, in life. Okay, so here we go. So another thing, and you guys have known this before, like when I talked about the Marilyn Monroe portrait breakdown that we did not that long ago, I typically like to start with doing the eyes first in a painting, okay? And even within the eyes, there's typically a certain order of steps I'll take to do the eyes, okay? So like in this picture, I don't always go in this order though, I guess, because this is not what I was going to say. I'm working on the pupil and the iris of the eye first. So I'm going from the center out, essentially. Other times I will start doing the whites of the eye, like the eyeball itself, and then I will do the center. And then from there I'll work my way like around the outsides of the eye and stuff. But taking a couple of key steps, breaking your, of course, that's what we're doing in this video. We're breaking this whole portrait down into manageable steps. You see, step 1, eyes, right? But even within the eyes itself, there are a couple key steps you can take to get the eye done, so you don't have to worry about, I gotta paint this whole eye at once, just take it one step at a time. That's my biggest advice to beginners, painting anything, take it one step at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself with an entire painting at once. I used to do that as a beginner too. And that's where I found that I would struggle because it's very overwhelming to look at this whole portrait at once and be like, there's no way I'm ever going to get there, right? And you're not going to if that's the mindset you have. So what you have to do is break things down into simple, manageable steps. That's what it is. So let's keep on doing the eyes, of course, around the eyeball itself. And then I go from there, typically the skin around the eyes, and I outline the eye. I'll probably add the eyelashes in a second. Actually, no, I won't. I'll do that later because another thing, it really depends. I'm also working off of a reference photo for this portrait, of course. I recommend working off of a reference photo. Otherwise, you really need to have like a live model sitting in front of you. Most of us don't have access to that, so just work off of a reference photo. It'll make your life a lot easier. So depending on what the eyelashes look like for each portrait, if the eyelashes are really, really short and not very noticeable, you can kind of just do that like right along the edges of the eye. However, in this case, Miss Betty had some very long lashes on. I mean, they might have been her natural eyelashes. She might not have had fake lashes, but in any case, they were really long. So if they were natural, very good. Very good lashes. And if they are really long like that, typically I will wait to do the lashes until I've done the skin behind where the lashes are going to sit. You can see my sketch lines like here and over here as to where those eyelashes are going to go. Okay? But now I'm moving on to other parts of the face, but I will come back and I will do the skin around the eye, like between the eye and the eyebrow. And then from there, I will put the eyelashes on top of that. So I will wait to do that second. Otherwise, if I did the eyelashes now, when I come back and do the skin around them, I'm going to end up covering them up probably anyway. Right? Unless you're really, really careful and you go around each individual lash, but that's, right. It's easier just to paint on the lashes kind of towards the end, you know, towards the end of this area, right? Once you've got this whole area done. But anyway, we moved on here after doing those eyes, those gorgeous, gorgeous eyes. Look at that. Oh, okay. Now come down here. I'm coming down here and I'm doing the teeth, and you can't really tell because this is a time-lapse video, but I am doing one single tooth at a time. Okay. Because again, another thing, teeth are really, really hard. I think it's like the hardest part of a portrait. So if you can, if you're just starting out doing portraits, do a picture where someone's not smiling smiling with their eyes or some, maybe no teeth. Teeth are really, really hard, okay? Because it's really easy to make mistakes with teeth because they're very, very light, typically, you know, white teeth. Even if you don't think your teeth are white, in a picture they're going to look pretty white compared to the rest of the face, right? But secondly, even though they are really, really light, they're still going to have some shadows in them, okay? There's still going to be probably some dark shadows casted on them, especially, you know, when you're smiling. And like your upper lip might cast a shadow over top of your teeth. That happens a lot when we're smiling for a portrait and when we're painting a portrait. So it's something you have to watch out for. Another thing that I've noticed, and I used to make this mistake as well, a lot of beginners will try to, if you're painting teeth for the first time, try to paint all the teeth at once. No, 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 no. That's a recipe for a no-no for me. Because, and again, I used to do that as well, but when you try to tackle like the whole smile at once, you're gonna look, if you do the whole thing, like all the teeth, just paint them all in at once, you're going to make it look like all one big weird tooth, right? There's not going to be any separation between each tooth. And we need to keep that integrity and intact in order for our, you know, the smile to look really realistic at the end. So my recommendation, especially for beginners, is to paint one tooth at a time, okay? One tooth within the mouth at a time. Doesn't always matter which tooth you start with, if you want to go from left to right, or sometimes I like to recommend going with the lightest tooth first and then going order from lightest to darkest, but I know that's complicated, but we actually do that in my portrait painting course, which is online now. I will talk more about that later, obviously, but it can be a little bit, it takes a little bit more time to do one tooth at a time, but your result is going to be a lot better because when we break it down again, it's like doing the whole portrait. We don't do the whole face at once. We don't just, you know, slap paint over the whole face and then try to do it from there, right? We do one section at a time. We do the eyes first, then we come down and do the mouth, or whatever order you want to do things in. This is just the order I prefer to do things in. We have to do things one singular step at a time. So when we're doing the mouth and we're doing the teeth, we need to do one tooth at a time so that we don't get overwhelmed and try to worry about the whole smile, right, at one time. So in this case, I am going one tooth at a time, even though it looks like in the time lapse I'm doing all of them at once. I'm really not. It's just because it's that much sped up. But I do one tooth at a time, and because this is zoomed out, it's kind of hard to see, but I do one tooth at a time, and I put the highlights and the lowlights in each tooth, right? So I really focus on, you know, starting from one corner, how dark is this tooth gonna look? Okay, and then I do that tooth, and then I put, is there any highlights, lowlights in this tooth? Yes, I put them in there. Then I move on to the next tooth. And then from there, I will come back and I will separate each of the teeth like that. Once I've got them all filled in, I know she looks kind of weird right now, right? In this position without the rest of the face filled in. But down here, I've done one tooth at a time. And then from there, I came back and I did separate each of them with like a simple line, just a simple medium to dark gray line, so that again, we want to separate the teeth. We don't want it to look like, if I show you before I put those lines in, we don't want it to look like this, right? We can't see that there are individual teeth in the mouth. We just see that it's all like one big like denture, like one big melted together dentured teeth. And we don't want that. We want it to be actually separated. And yes, with the denture thing, I know Betty White is famous for being an older actress, but I actually painted this portrait of her based on a photo of her when she was very young in the 1950s, so I can guarantee she wasn't wearing dentures in this photo. Now after that, I will go in and I filled in the rest of like the inside of the mouth where it's typically dark. There's typically some shadows like underneath the teeth. And then I move on to do the lips. Lips are not typically too hard. You got to pay attention to make sure you get the highlights in there correctly, especially if the lips are really glossy. You want to make sure that you add some white highlights to make them look super glossy. Not sure if, yeah, I did that here. So you can see I added some shadows here, like in the corners of the mouth, on the lower lip at least. And then here in the center, I added some white highlights. And typically to get those white highlights, to make it look like it's really glossy, move your brush up and down. I mean, you're going from left to right across the lip, right? But keep your brush moving up and down, because this is the direction that the lip, I don't know, the skin of the lip would be, right? Because you have to think, our lips are essentially just baggy pouches of skin. I don't know how else to call it. But they are like baggy pouches of skin. And when you smile, you kind of stretch the skin a bit. And it kind of, or if you don't, even if you pucker, you get like wrinkles in the skin of your lips, you know? And so to recreate the look of shine on the lips, it helps to go in the direction of where those wrinkles would be in the skin of the lips. Again, I know it's weird to talk about, but as artists, we have to think of things this way in order to, you know, really understand what we're trying to paint, essentially. I know, it's funky, but roll with me on this. And there I even added some more white highlights, so that's really nice. So like I said, I typically like to do eyes, mouth, and then I move on to the nose, and then from there I just fill in the skin all over the face. And with the nose, pretty simple. We just fill in like the nostrils, if we can see the nostrils, pretty dark. There might be a shadow casted underneath the nose and around the nose. And you guys, I know where the highlights and the lowlights need to be on this face because I'm looking at my reference photo. I mean, you can't see the reference photo here in the video. Actually, you can see my laptop here. Hello, hey laptop, shout out. Here in the background, which is where my reference photo, I would have had that pulled up on my screen while I was painting this. So I was referencing that photo often so that I can figure out where I need to put shadows, the highlights and the lowlights, all that on the face. And from there I'm finishing the nose, and I'm moving out to the cheeks. I'll do the skin under the eyes, kind of connect it together. There I did put in, if you notice that, a little added detail. Right, I'm trying to get it for you here. She had a little bit of smile lines under her eyes, so I did come back. That's a really nice addition there. And I added just a really, really thin line with like medium gray on top of the skin right there. See, and then I made a little bit of wrinkles. Just, again, not because she was old. She was actually very young when this picture was taken, but again, when she was smiling, she had those smile lines, right? So I wanted to make sure I recreated that here. And to do that, again, just really, really thin lines with some darker shade of gray than the skin tone itself. And then it looks like over here, I did a little bit of a shadow up next to, oh, there's our eyelashes, up next to the cheek. But then again, just like I said before, I came back, I did the skin over the top, the eye, in between the eye and the eyebrow. And then from there, I added in those eyelashes. Now, doesn't her eye look a little bit more awake and alert after adding those lashes in? Oh, gorgeous, gorgeous. I love this portrait. Okay. And from there, I did fill in the eyebrow. Eyebrows are very, very easy, you guys. Very, very easy. Again, reference your photo to see how dark or light they should be. Some people have really light eyebrows, kind of like me. Redhead. But some people will have, you know, darker eyebrows where you just fill them in with the dark gray. If they are lighter eyebrows, they typically will show more highlights and lowlights in them. So typically if it's a lighter colored eyebrow, I will do it with like a lighter gray. I'll fill in the eyebrow with lighter gray. And then from there, I will dab some darker shades of gray over top of it. But I like to do it in the direction that the hair is, because eyebrows are hair, right? So, and typically it goes like away from the eye, right? Away from the eye and typically towards the hairline. So like in this case, the direction of the hair would probably be going to the upper left, right? The upper left. So I would swipe the brush in that direction. So then you just get a little bit more of like hair texture. Makes it look a little bit more realistic. Just a little bit of a note there. Then from there I'm filling in the forehead. Nice and easy because it's, again, typically really, really light in the middle of the forehead. And then on one side or the other or both, there might be some shadows casted. And then from there, filling in around this eye. And then I'm sure I'll do the eyelashes over here as well. Yep, just like that. Yep. And then I did down under here. Again, I made that wrinkle underneath the eye. This one, the line is a little bit thicker for that smile line. But again, that's probably just because that's the way it looked like in the photo, right? In the reference photo. I did this eyebrow. And you can actually see in this one a little bit better that I did come back and I did do a little bit of that hair-like texture on top of it. You can't really see over here because the light, just literally the light from above hitting the canvas as I was painting, it kind of reflected over here a little bit. But in this eyebrow, you can see I started off with really dark, either black or raw umber. I can't tell which. Which should I do? I used raw umber, so really, really dark gray. Filled it all in. Then I took some of the medium gray and I kind of did some wisping brush strokes this way. This time it would be, you know, away from the eye and toward the hairline. So this way it would be to the upper right? Or maybe even down a little bit, it almost looks like. Again, just look at your reference photo. It's a little bit different each time, but sometimes it just depends on the way the eyebrow is shaped. Like in this one, I think it goes up towards the upper right here on this part. And then as you get closer, like towards the middle over, it's like the hair kind of is, I don't want to say combed, but it's like groomed this way that it comes downwards, a little bit more downwards. So that's what I did there. I did add some highlights on top of that. But again, if it's a lighter eyebrow, then typically I will fill it in with the lighter color first, and then I'll come back and add some of the darker color on top of it, like the darker gray. Now down here, I'm finishing up the cheek. I had a nice little light over here. I had a little bit of a smile line here. I tried to smoothen it out as best I can. Kind of outlining the cheek there. And then of course on this side with the shadow along the face there. Yes, just like that. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. And you can see I didn't really show, I cropped this photo pretty big, so you couldn't really see her hair very much here, but we can still rewind and see what I did to do the hair. I think it was pretty dark, actually. So I think I filled it in with black. And then from there, trying to slow it down much. I'm like skipping it there. But probably from there, I dipped into probably the medium or the light gray, and I just did some dabs on there because her hair was like in really tight curls in the full reference photo. So just to mimic that, I kind of like to dab the brush kind of in circular motions. That'll get you that like curl texture. Just like that. Then of course she just had a little simple shirt collar down here. Very, very simple stuff. And then I decided to do the background just a little bit with really, really light gray just to make it look. And there we can see side by side. How did I do? Right? Hopefully not too shabby, right? I think it looks really, really nice. Man, I'm proud of my work. Another thing, you guys, even as beginners, if you're doing portraits for the very first time, always, always, always be proud of your work. Be proud of your accomplishments. You know, even if your work doesn't turn out exactly the way you hope, or the way you'd hope, make sure you're really, really, like, be proud of yourself for at least attempting, right? It's really, really hard. It really is. So give yourself credit, of course, where credit is due. So, of course, aside from that, that is all for this portrait breakdown video today. Now, aside from this, I also mentioned earlier, if you are a beginner that's really, really interested in making portraits, I actually have, and I'm so excited about it, a brand new full How to Paint Portraits for Beginners course over on my new Canvas Academy online painting and learning platform. So with this brand new course, you're going to learn exactly how to paint different parts, different sections of the face. Very slowly, very methodically. We take everything completely like micro steps, you guys. I'm talking like one step at a time, even slower than that, like 1/2 of a step at a time. Because I want you as a beginner to feel like painting portraits is really accessible to you, because it is, and you can do it. So of course we do a couple of classes focused on eyes. We do a couple of classes focused on mouths, on nose, the hair, basically every section of the face. And then by the end, we pull it all together and make a couple of beautiful, amazing portraits together. And like I tell all of the students, you're going to be so surprised by what you're capable of when you join the course. So I would be honored if you would join that course with me. Of course, the link for that will be down below. And aside from that, happy painting, my home dogs.